Oh, okay. I think it's already. And live from Mumbai and Brussels, it's ZN Live.
And live.
Very excited today because this is the last episode of ZN Live of 2022. And what a year that was. And I'm joined with the amazing Jesús Azogue, who is going to share some thoughts about 2023. What are the trends? What are the big topics? What is going to happen next year? So we're going to talk about some of these trends, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments, any thoughts about what you think are the big trends that are going to dominate this space. And I'll start with one that I think is probably the one that's the most straightforward, which is uncertainty. Basically, I think the thing that we can all admit is that we just don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what the year is going to be like. We think it's going to be recession, but we don't know. So we have uncertainty. And in this uncertainty, many new things can happen. And we're going to come back to uncertainty, but let's focus on one of the areas that you've been really actively looking at, as everybody who's watching this knows, which is the world of the metaverse, of VR, and augmented reality. Now, there's been a lot of hype, and we talked about this 2 years ago, I remember, and there was a promise of Facebook becoming Meta and everything coming together. Now, the reality is it hasn't really materialized at scale. There's been a lot of negative hype about that. So how do you feel this year? I mean, do you think that we're going to suddenly see it change, or are we still on for a long ride before it becomes the future?
Well, it's true. Actually, the fact that Meta used Meta as the name, it's been affecting the concept of metaverse, and everybody that hear metaverse has already a negative side of that because I don't know, it's like Meta or Facebook, wherever they touch, then suddenly they make it something negative. So it's a pity because actually it's true that they are the ones who have been investing the most also on this industry, and a lot of things are advancing thanks to them. Oculus at the time, and now Meta as such. Um, it's true that also they have started to popularize that name. Metaverse was something that was used already a bit in some areas. Now everybody is using that word, not very clear yet. There are people who are using the terminology, not they talk about different metaverse. I believe that is going to be only one metaverse, the same as there is only one web. And what is missing still for the metaverse to happen is the interoperability, is bringing things together. The fact that you will be able to be on one place, immersed, because actually metaverse is understood in the moment that you are immersed with virtual reality or augmented reality or mixed reality. The moment that you are immersed with the digital elements around you, and then you are there with some friends, and suddenly from there you can go to a meeting at work, and then from that meeting you can go to a shop to buy something, and you're doing that without really having to get out from one application and get into the other, the same way as we move from one website to another. That interoperability is the one that is going to create the metaverse. Now, this nowadays, we can say that it's already been discussed and studied the same way as Tim Berners-Lee at the time came with the www, the web, as a standard. That is the one that we're using nowadays. There is the metaverse. What is the name? Metaverse Standards Forum, where there are plenty of organizations, almost all of them, companies and all that, where Meta is there, but Google also, except for Apple, and I will come to that in a second. So all of them are coming together to establish what is going to be the standardization of that actual metaverse. So why I say all this? I believe that the metaverse is seen as something quite negative. True. because people were considering metaverse equal meta equal Facebook, which is wrong. Metaverse is, they're creating just one application that is going to be related or inserted on the metaverse, or they talk about different metaverse like different platforms, but at the end of the day, those are platforms like games. So the year was difficult, but it's true that this concept is being developed. They're starting to put the basis, and hopefully in along this year and next year, all those standardizations are going to be established, and we're going to be seeing then the possibilities of jumping from one application to another. That is going to be the germ of that real metaverse that is going to happen. And with all the investment that is happening, it will be sooner or later that happens. So that's for me in 2023. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe it's going to be 2024, but already in 2023 we will see news and some advance on that front.
Yeah, and I think the issue with what you mentioned at the beginning with Meta as a name is simply that people don't want it to be owned by a company. So I think that's creating a bit of tension because they're thinking, I like the idea, I'm interested, but I don't want to go into a walled garden, into a space which is owned only by one company. And I think that's probably the challenges that people have to see, different people being able to access it. Now, the other thing that a lot of people were waiting for was AR, augmented reality, coming in from Apple. Now, I heard that again it was going to be postponed. Are we still waiting for it to happen? I mean, I think over the year it should happen, but A, do you think it's going to happen? And B, will it be a game changer?
Yes. Just consider this: before the smartphone, before the iPhone, the smartphone was some kind of illusion. You remember the Blackberries were there and all that, and it was just in the moment that the iPhone appeared, then our life completely changed. Okay, so that expectation is there already for several months and already even some years. It's true that Apple is being postponing it. It seems that it's going to happen the launch of their headset by the end of the year. Hopefully it happens. Apparently the production is starting already now in February, apparently. So it's true that they are developing it, but they are still checking some quality, doing some quality checkings and all that on the software and on the way of people, how they're going to use that. I think they're learning also a lot from the mistakes from Meta, maybe. But I think in the moment that happens, and if it happens as we all expect, I think it's going to be the big push for this reality to happen. What is funny is that they're doing it everything on their own. So as I say, on that forum for the standardization of the metaverse, they are the player that you don't see there. So, but at the same time, is one of the biggest companies that in this industry really can create a big impact. So we need to be very careful. I mean, very attentive, because by the end of the year, I think we can have a big hype. Actually,
yeah, I think that we're going to see more things happen. We've tried. We did our own Christmas event in the metaverse, which I think was quite interesting. We were figuring things out, moving from one space to the other. I think was very exciting, and people quite enjoyed it. But there were a lot of things that we had to figure out in terms of how many people can you put in a room, and how much content can you put everywhere. So I think that we saw that there's something there, but I think you need to practice it. You need to learn the skills. I also agree with Justin, who just wrote, with Apple jump in the wagon, it'll create momentum. I agree. I feel that Apple is trying to decide when it's the right time to do this, because they don't want to come in and then not see a big uptick. Now, I want to move to another area, which for me, this has been a really interesting and exciting transformation the last couple of weeks, actually, which is ChatGPT, which is, of course, AI, artificial intelligence. So, of course, everybody's been talking about artificial intelligence for ages. And I think to the point where we kind of think, yeah, it's there, it's in your phone, it's in a whole bunch of applications. But ChatGPT, which is a free application done by a company called OpenAI, which claims that it's open, which means everybody can build on top of it, has launched this ChatGPT 3, the third version, and it works incredibly well. So you can have it write text for you, poems, movies, videos, and I think that technology was there. So I don't. It's not that it's a breakthrough, but it's a breakthrough that everybody can start playing with it. And I think I don't know. I mean, there are so many articles about it just in the space of a week. University teachers being terrified that now students can write their essays just like that. I think for content creators, it's going to have a massive impact. I've been trying, writing text, helping to write emails, helping to improve copy, to write posts, but it can go beyond that. So we have to learn how to use it. But it's literally, in my mind, it's like an extension of your brain. And it seems that we've only scratched the surface of what it can do. And there's going to be a new version next year. So I think, my first point is like, I think everybody needs to try it and just enter different queries to see what you can do. But then you need to start thinking, okay, how does this change the way I work, the way I do business? What have you been trying on ChatGPT?
So I was even trying to start writing a novel and all that. But it's true that every time you try to write a novel, it says, I'm not the best for that. I cannot write so long. So for that, I can give you advice. And so it tells you that then it's better to go step by step. And it's at the end of the day, it tells you, okay, it's up to you to write the novel. I know that there are people already that are using these kind of tools to create novels, and they have even published, and there's been a lot of discussions around that. It's not only in the written, but also on the audiovisual. There's big discussions about this thing. Also about authority in terms of the visual, because it's taking some elements from visuals that are online, and there are sometimes people that, so in terms of copyright, there is some issues. But at the end of the day, all these open a space that for me is really interesting as a creative, because what is the position then of the creative nowadays? Is there any position? There is no position anymore. And does it matter? Because at the end of the day, we are creative, and we like human is a big part of the human being is to be creative. If it's not on one area, it can be on another, or you can step farther than that. And as soon as you create 20-30 works done directly through the AI, maybe you see another way of creating and giving a step forward, and then later on can be catch up again by the AI. I don't know. Or it can be that at the end the AI will be so advanced, like in a lot of movies, that it's not going to consider us anymore, and it's going to live its own life. I don't know. That's maybe a bit far still. But as a creative, for the moment, right now, today, I see it as a great tool to complement and to support creativity. This is great. It's amazing. And then, apart from that, it depends on what you do with it. And how you can bring it then a step further, or if it's what you receive from the AI is more than enough for what is your purpose, great. If you want to give it an extra step, then it's up to you to come up with different solutions. But I completely embrace these kind of tools, because it's helping a lot. It's like at the time when photography appeared, and painters were like, okay, what are we going to do now? So
no, and I think you're it's very interesting. First of all, it's a tool, very much a tool for the moment, and I think it's a tool that just allows you to do more work with less resources. And in terms of content, for example, just improving the writing, checking something, that's already very straightforward. It does it very well. Then creating summaries from texts into a summary, then bullet points, then tweets, then posts. I think it's very well equipped to do that. Now, the point, and I think, when you said what's the role of the creative, well, ironically, it needs creative direction, and it needs to be managed. So you can't get the output you want until you know how to phrase the query. So you might say, hey, so for example, for the novel, you might say, give me the outline of a novel. And then you can say, okay, break it down into chapters. And then you can say, okay, write chapter 1 in the style of Quentin Tarantino or Shakespeare or whatever. and then it's going to start doing that. And I think so. I think you need to speak or to write to it instructions in a certain way. But my feeling is that once you learn how to do it, you can start doing things which are essentially, a lot of the things it does are not, I think, incredibly strategic and sophisticated things. But that's a lot of the content that's out there. A lot of the business and marketing content is actually, I would say, ideal for ChatGPT because it can write things, but you still need to say, okay, this is the tone that I want you to have. This is the kind of focus of the message. These are the points I want you to cover. So it's a little bit like when we do a briefing, the briefing needs to be really good, and then you kind of need to adapt the briefing. But it means, I think, that done right, you can start doing a lot more with a lot less resources. And actually, the first thing I did when I was testing it, I said, "Can you write a love poem to my wife?" I put 3 or 4 things, and it came up with a really credible poem, which I read and attributed to ChatGPT. I
Okay.
just want to say, but it was it wrote it very quickly, and yeah, and Justin just posted about, I'm glad that humans are still needed to provide artistic tone. Yeah, I think the point, coming back to what you said, Jesus, it's a bit like photography. I mean, this is a tool that allows you to do a whole bunch of things that you can't really do in the same way with human intervention, but you need the guidance, you need the focus, and you need a creative approach. And I think that's for image creation, for example. And actually, Sean, who's part of the ZN network and has worked on a number of things, has been posting a lot on AI, and he's been talking about how he's been experimenting with images. And I think, again, once you understand what you can get out of it, I think you can start creating a lot of really interesting things.
But I like the fact that it doesn't have to be done by human to appreciate the beauty of or the value of a piece. I mean, because I feel like a lot of people, just because it's done by a machine, it is like not acceptable or brought aside. No, it can be amazingly beautiful or attractive, the final piece. So it's something that maybe we need to consider. I would like to add also that I heard yesterday from an influencer video YouTuber in Spain that is Distrito Metaverso. I would like to say hi from here. Hopefully they see it. Actually, they were Carlos was commenting yesterday that actually he heard that on Meta, on Horizon Walls, it's possible that they are starting to implement AI. So like these people, the users will be able to create the walls that are there through AI, meaning that then suddenly they can say, okay, I want a space that looks like on the Middle Ages, okay, with 3 dragons and a castle and 3 trees. And then suddenly that is created just because you say. And that would be really amazing to see how suddenly you're creating spaces on a virtual space just by wording. That would be really cool to see in the future.
No, and I think that's a very interesting point, because a lot of the discussion around AI and ChatGPT is, what are we going to do with this? And I think what you just identified is, people don't know how to use the metaverse, and when they get into it, they walk around. But if this empowers them to be creators, as you said, I mean, you could say, I'd like you to create a conference room with 3 different presentations, and I'd like this to do. Because the biggest problem for the moment, I think, is actually user friendliness. It's like you get in, you don't know how to do this and that. So if you can use ChatGPT to start helping you navigate that world, and basically any friction that you remove will make it much better. So Justin, thank you for watching. Justin says Westworld season 4. Don't spoil it. It's on this with the storytelling scenes. Well, I'm not going to discuss that because I haven't seen season 4, but I know that it's all about stories, and that the basic thinking behind it is stories. We've also got Passan saying the last ZN Live for what a year. Okay, that's on our ZN account. Fantastic. Can't wait to see what ZN has in store for us in 2023. It's going to be very exciting. I think to me, I can see ChatGPT being a real driving force for innovation and easy innovation, things that we can actually do tomorrow. But there's one other trend, which it's probably not a trend as such, but it's what I like to call back to basics. Because as we get excited about these future technologies, we often forget that you still need to get your basics right. And one of the trends, for example, that I'm quite excited about is email. Email newsletters. I mean, this is unsexy. It's not cool. Email is like 90s or whatever. But actually, a lot of people are doing really good email newsletters now. They send them out to that database. Now, why are they doing that? Because people still use email. And that, that's one of the things that I think people need to be careful when they get excited about new technology, is that old technology can live in multiple different iterations. Email is still very much a tool that everybody uses, but now that people are learning to write better copy, nice little things. I'm reading quite a few newsletters like on a regular basis that I really enjoy, and they've like with a nice format where the quotes I feel I get value out of them, and they're just about the right format. And one thing that people discovered is that email is something that you own. And by that, I mean, if you're on a social channel like Twitter, you are giving Twitter your list. I mean, Twitter owns everything. They decide everything. They can ban you, as Elon Musk has demonstrated. They can change the rules. This is true of all social platforms. It's not a judgment on them. That's the nature of the business. So with email, you create your database and you can send things to everybody there. So I think, old tech, so email would be on them, video, which is always, it's the next thing. Well, it's there, it's not the next thing, but we need to still keep getting better. Is there any old tech that you think is going to do well in 2023?
Not necessarily all. It's something that is in continuous evolution, but actually it's video. Video also, we see the evolution of the use of video. Actually now even including videos on some animation inside emails is creating big impact. But the fact that the video is something that is going to continue during next year. There are plenty of ways, more and more of creating video content, and it's much more and more easier for people to create and generate videos. So for sure that is going to be a tool that is there, and that permits to show things and not only to tell. So for sure that is going to be one of the things that in 2023 we will continue growing.
Yeah, and I think with video, now that we've got used to doing all these Teams and Zooms and everything, so everybody has a camera and has used it, because before it was like you need to be a weird influencer or something to post videos and all that. Now it's really, everybody. Now that also means that people need to get better at creating video content. But I think it's going to be, I also think a bit like in the early days of video, people are again accepting more Zoom-like videos because they're used to them. So you don't need necessarily the studio professional production, although you need both. But I agree with you. I think video is going to continue to be the natural way of communicating. And I think the other, maybe a final trend that I think we need to put as context for next year is that we're going to be in a crisis environment, which means we have a recession, we have the war in Ukraine, we have prices, inflation being driven up. And again, that's the uncertainty I talked about at the beginning, but it also means that we're not back to the good old pre-COVID days, whatever you think those days were like. And a lot of people who are hoping that this would be, we can put COVID behind, we can stop doing Zoom calls, we can move on to face-to-face. That's not going to happen in a kind of natural way. I think we're going to see pressure to cut business costs, to reduce the costs of doing big events, especially in the EU. Doing a big event now with champagne and a nice backdrop doesn't look great with the recession, the corruption scandal. So I think people are going to have to be a bit more tech-friendly and low-cost, however much they might dislike it. And I know that in Brussels, people really don't like this. They really like their events. And that I'm sure they're going to happen, but it's still not going to be the return to how it used to be. And I think it's also going to be a better way of doing events with more digital, with more innovation, with more interaction with different people. As Justin said, it's important to be able to adapt and accept the fact that the world is continuing to undergo a lot of changes in the coming year. What do you think?
And yes, I agree. I agree. But I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about something like, okay, let's put something for the like a bet, like what do you think is going to happen with Twitter, Phil, Mastodon?
Well, I mean, look, my bet, I think is pretty probabilistic. So, the story obviously is that Twitter is being run in a rather shambolic way by Elon Musk. I would say, I mean, first of all, disclaimer, I have no clue of what's going to happen. But I would say the most probable outcome is that Twitter will stay there. I think the idea of it disappearing doesn't make sense. I think the brand will be damaged permanently in the sense that I think people will always think something could change at any time. I also think that Elon Musk is probably going to manage to make it quite sticky with the community that he's interested in, which is, slightly more to the right, or slightly or a lot more to the right than it used to be. But it's still going to be, I think, the hub of a big and important conversation. If you look at how people have behaved, they've complained a lot, but they haven't left. And advertisers have decreased their spending. I think that's probably going to continue, which means Elon Musk will have to figure out other ways to make money. Hopefully, he said he would stand down as CEO, so I think he's going to do that at some point. So I think a diminished Twitter will be there, and maybe it'll start doing things that are quite successful from a tech point of view, like some kind of TikTokization of Twitter, where they reintroduce some videos or some new thing that makes Twitter more engaging. So I think it's going to be there, but it's going to be less core. In terms of the alternatives like Mastodon, again, it's hard to predict if Mastodon is going to successfully grow next year. But I think a lot of people who've tried it have enjoyed it, especially the EU influencers, the one that we know, because they drive the conversation in Brussels. People like Andrew Stroline, people like John Worth. A lot of those have actually set up a Mastodon presence and have actually been happy to see that kind of engagement that they hadn't seen since the early days of Twitter. Now, it doesn't mean it's for everyone. But for example, I think I read that Mozilla is about to launch a Mastodon iteration. Now, I think if people invest in building a really strong one with a lot of tech support and all that, it could become, again, I think it's going to be a competitor for certain kinds of audiences, niche audiences, and it could very well be that it stays. So my bet is, number one, Twitter's still around, but diminished, and people have certainly, I mean, they already were a little uncomfortable with Twitter. It's only going to get worse because of the image, I would say, certainly in the EU space. Mastodon probably still around and growing. And then, of course, Instagram will still be there. Facebook will be there. And I think we're going to see other channels. I mean, actually, YouTube is also pretty important and will probably continue to stay because it's actually kind of has a very strong position and is being watched. And of course, maybe a new platform. I've been playing with Be Real for some time. Again, it's doing something completely different, but it's kind of interesting and it's taken off. So I would say let's put also a newcomer that we haven't seen yet that might make a new kind of story and provide new ways of engaging. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I agree with you. I think the story is that Twitter is going to continue. I'm looking forward to see what Elon Musk is going to do and what he's going to bring after all this destroying or yes that he has created, or crisis he has created there. But I definitely think that is going to happen similar to what you are describing. The new platform let's see which one. Then in terms of what you were describing of events, I think that the digital is a good solution for what you were describing. The use of digital media, considering maybe the events, hybrid events, also reducing then the cost of traveling, for example. So that's something that I think during the year we're going to see maybe more. Still, I'm wondering, would like to see much more, but it's true that it still is early. How much that is going to happen also using mixed reality technologies and all that. I know on the area of the Brussels bubble still is very early stage for that. It's true that actually the application of Meta on the phone has been downloaded. It's one of the ones most downloaded in the last weeks. So that shows that actually there are plenty of headsets that are being sold, mainly in the US. It's true that still we see much more in the US than here in Europe. But yeah, I think in terms of social media channels is going to be on that area. Another thing, Phil, I'm conscious about the time, but it's true that we didn't talk about what is going to happen with one of the big things of 2022. That was the NFTs and blockchain. Everybody was talking about that, but then suddenly it came down.
Of course, yeah.
It's true that there's been a lot of crisis and a lot of people that are kind of losing the hype or the interest about that, because there's been also a lot of fraud behind that and all. But what I think, the way I see that this is going to happen is like maybe it's going to go down in a kind of hidden status. It's going to maybe continue. I believe that all the metaverse bill or that I was describing before is partially sustained on blockchain, because by the moment it's the only way that you can define property in a not centralized process. Otherwise, the metaverse then would be owned or centralized by one company or two. So blockchain looks like the possibility for that. So it could be that then after that, in I don't know, in several months, in 1 year, then it starts again coming back in a different shape, or then with a much better value, with less speculation as we have been seeing during last year. But it's true that for the moment is the only way, and I think the best of showing property on the digital space. So that is not centralized in one company.
Yeah.
So I think
And
that's
I
huge value.
Yeah, I agree. And I think NFTs are actually interesting conceptually. And as you know, because you're focused also on the art world, there is value, and it's very consistent with art itself, because owning a piece of art, it doesn't matter if it's, I mean, you want to have the original. So as long as you can prove it with, the actual branding and encryption, that's what matters. So I think there's potential there. It might be that this is a bubble like the dot-com bubble, where 90% or a huge amount of companies go bust, but the ones that survive come in a different form and a much more reliable, resilient form, and then they come back offering much more reasonable service. Because the problem with the hype is that people just see all the mess and they forget about the actual. Google was formed in 1998, and we think about boo.com and about stupid things that went bust because they didn't make sense. But at the same time, the survivors changed the world and changed the economy, and they're the ones who kind of made it through that. So I think that's a distinct possibility. So I think with that, we have had a fabulous 2022. So I want to thank everybody who's been working on this, especially Justin, who's with us today, and the people who are watching. Thank you, Passan, for the comments. And all the people who will watch later on. Have a fantastic New Year celebration. I think 2023 is going to be very challenging and very interesting. And we're going to experience creative destruction. We're going to discover new technologies. We've already started to see them. And I think with the right mindset, it's going to be great. So I want to say Happy New Year to the whole ZN network, to all the people who watch us, to families and friends, to Leora, who couldn't join us today because she's on holiday, to the hyperlearners who put so much work into doing that, to our amazing team across all the different projects that we do. And thanks to you, Jesús, and have a great flight tomorrow. I hope you have a fantastic time with your family.
Thank you.
Thank you, and see you all next year in 2023.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye-bye.